right here watching history be made. Bitcoin is now up to $111.
A Bitcoin was worth less than a penny when Laszlo Hunyats first traded Bitcoin for pizza 9 years ago.
There is something else you need to know about Bitcoin. As time passes, Bitcoin's value keeps on increasing because people trust their system. This system posed a threat to the powerful institutions because Bitcoin itself is termed as a decentralized currency, a currency that is backed by no governments, no banks, or any individual. Unlike traditional money, Bitcoin has no single authority to print or control it. This value clearly comes from its scarcity and the decentralized system behind it. Now all of this begs a question. How did Bitcoin slip to the hands of those who control everything else? Well, it's about time we unveil the curtains and discover the true nature of Bitcoin and why it seems impossible to control. Bitcoin's dominance is something we must really understand. But at first, let's take a step back and ask a simple question. What is money? At its core, money is a tool that functions as a medium of exchange. Money began with the barter system, a system which involved trading goods for other goods. For example, a farmer having wheat would trade with a potter for clay pots, leading to a mutual benefit between both the parties. There would be times when the potter might not need wheat, but the farmer still needs the clay pot. This created a problem in the trade that pushed people to adopt common mediums of exchange, like shells and precious metals. After centuries, we came to use paper money that is backed with gold, which was termed as gold standard. Yet by the year 1971, this gold standard was removed.
Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
It restricted governments from managing economies during crisis. Since the removal of gold standard, paper money do not represent a clear value. The value is made because the government decrees that it has value. This transition gave governments and banks to dictate the supply and value of money. We, the people, accepted this because of trust. But this centralized system has some problems with it. Their ability to manipulate money supply led to economic bubbles and financial crises.
Lehman Brothers is going bankrupt, and financial markets from Asia to Europe are doing their utmost to prevent Monday from turning from dark to black.
Major financial institutions have teetered on the edge of collapse, and some have failed. We are in the midst of a serious financial crisis.
The 2008 financial crisis became the perfect example. The risky lending from the banks made a global crisis, so much so that it led to the collapse of one of the biggest banks in the United States, Lehman Brothers. The trust is lost here. From the removal of gold standard, people were questioning for years that why banks and governments had control over something as essential as money. But while the people were still asking questions, cypherpunks had already made up their minds. Cypherpunks were part of the movement against centralized authorities like governments. They advocated for cryptography. Basically, it's a way to keep your connections secure in the presence of third parties by a term called encryption. Cypherpunks laid the groundwork, but their ideas came to life when a mysterious figure under the pseudonym of Satoshi Nakamoto published a revolutionary white paper in 2008, a paper titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. If you see, Bitcoin proposed something radical, a currency that could exist without any governments or any institutions controlling its supply and value. This was intentionally architected to eliminate any of these control mechanisms. The solution Nakamoto wanted was simple: replace the trust in institutions with trust in mathematics and cryptographic proof through blockchain technology. A technology where a participant in the network maintains a copy of the transaction ledger. This ledger is held in blocks, with each participant holding a copy forming a chain. To implement any change in the block, it requires consensus among thousands of independent computers around the world. These computers are called nodes. Now let's pause for a moment. Here's where things can get a little bit confusing. Whilst we covered how money and Bitcoin works, we need to understand why it seems impossible to control. Till to this day, Satoshi Nakamoto's identity is unknown. The disappearance represents perhaps the strongest evidence that Bitcoin cannot be controlled by its own creator. His last known private communication occurred on April 23, 2011, when he told developer Mike Hearn that, "I have moved on to other things and Bitcoin is in good hands with Gavin and everyone." This anonymity was likely intentional, recognizing that an identifiable creator would become a target for government pressure. By disappearing completely, he eliminated any possibility of being compelled to modify the Bitcoin or reveal the private keys. This sacrifice is something that really made Bitcoin as what we see today. When Bitcoin became popular, the governments were very much unlike by what it was influencing. China's relationship with Bitcoin was a perfect example. China made the most sustained and comprehensive government control attempt in the entire crypto history. The People's Bank of China launched its first offensive on December 2013, stopping banks from handling Bitcoin transactions and classifying it as a special virtual commodity that is lacking legal recognition. They banned initial coin offerings, cryptocurrency exchanges, and ultimately restricted all crypto trading by 2021. It was kind of dramatic because Bitcoin's global hash rate had dropped significantly, but they cannot ban how it was designed. Mining operations quickly migrated to Kazakhstan, Canada, and other areas. Within months, Bitcoin's hash rate had recovered and started growing. But China isn't the only country that has implemented these Bitcoin regulation strategies. The US, EU, and other countries aimed for an approach. But the approach was slightly different. Let me share you an incident that happened a decade before. In 2014, Jamie Dimon, the CEO of the world's largest bank JP Morgan Chase, made some serious accusations on the underlying value of the Bitcoin.
I could care less what Bitcoin trades for, how it trades, why it trades, who trades it. If you're stupid enough to buy it, you'll pay the price for it one day. And the other thing I've always made of Bitcoin, governments, and this is not a technological statement, governments are going to crush it one day. Governments like to know where the money is, who has it, and what you're doing with it.
This year, at the month of May, the well-known JP Morgan Chase has announced that it would allow Bitcoin transactions. And guess what? Jamie Dimon himself had agreed upon it.
The last time I ever talked about Bitcoin is I defend your right to do Bitcoin.
The US Securities and Exchange Commission, as you see, filed lawsuits against these crypto exchange companies, and it didn't work well. They eventually failed due to the public criticism for not providing clear rules beforehand. Besides these government crackdowns, Bitcoin has its own power players to influence its importance. We name them as whales, or Bitcoin whales. A whale in this Bitcoin world owns at least thousands of these. MicroStrategy is the largest holder of Bitcoin, having over 600,000 Bitcoins. Elon Musk's Tesla holds about 11,500 Bitcoins, and there are these Bitcoin ETFs collectively managing hundreds and thousands of coins. In case of traditional money, the one who owns more have more power over it. Whales had the ability to manipulate the Bitcoin markets or induce the pump and dump schemes, but these schemes were not a big threat to the Bitcoin. The $2 trillion market cap from Bitcoin makes it increasingly resistant to these manipulation tactics. Yet, this leads to another question. Is there any way that the Bitcoin's core developers could actually make a change on how it should operate? Well, there was an incident happened for this case. The blocksize war demonstrates a war between the big blockers and the small blockers. The community developers are the big blockers here. They wanted to increase the block size for faster transactions. But in order to implement this, the whole community must accept it, as per the technical design as we spoke before. The actual block size of Bitcoin was about 1 megabytes, and these developers want to increase up to 8 megabytes and so on. If the whole community had accepted towards this transition, then it would be pretty accurate that the big blockers would either centralize the mining, which means only the fewer entities could handle the larger data, but the majority of the Bitcoin community rejected this proposal to maintain decentralization. This incident pushed to separate the community into two as Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. This separation highlighted a deeper concern that continues to worry the Bitcoin community, that is the Bitcoin's mining power, and it is always owned by the wealthiest. Foundry USA and Antpool control over 51.5% of Bitcoin's mining power, which is enough for a devastating attack. But a 1-hour 51% attack would cost $10 billion, and this attack immediately crashes Bitcoin's price, where the attackers gain no value from it. So it's clear that there is no way that these entities would do it. For those of you who have followed me this far, you might be wondering a few things. Why did all of these Bitcoin control attempts fail? This design is the main reason for these failures. The network works through distributed consensus, which means thousands of independent nodes must agree on a transaction validity, and no single party can modify this consensus without convincing a majority of nodes to adopt changes, a requirement that becomes more difficult as the network grows. Also, Bitcoin uses proof of work mechanism. This mechanism works based on how miners compete to solve complex mathematical puzzles by burning real electricity. If the miners play false games, the other honest miners reject their mine block, which results in loss of their investment. Now here is where a secured system is created. The puzzles get more complex for every mining operation, and the miners solely focus on being honest rather than trying to cheat, which in return they receive a Bitcoin as a profit. This strength, as you saw from Bitcoin, will push the elites to adopt it because they would lose in the market if they didn't. Their participation also attracts additional users who further decentralize the network. From the surface, Bitcoin seems to look untouchable, or maybe for now. But what if a new frontier of technology arrives? A technology that could disrupt everything we thought was secure, emerging into the world of quantum computing. If you see, Bitcoin is running with the classical computers. Quantum computers are entirely different from these. A classical computer used binary bits like zeros and ones to perform calculations. Quantum computers use qubits that can exist in multiple states simultaneously. Qubits can break Bitcoin's encryption exponentially faster than the regular computers. A powerful enough quantum computer could get private keys from the public addresses, essentially stealing Bitcoin from any wallet. But here's the thing, these quantum computers are years away from now. Bitcoin's developers are already working on these quantum resistant upgrades. For now, it is just more science fiction than immediate reality. And that's it. I have praised a lot about Bitcoin, but I shouldn't, because there are some reasons behind it. And I missed most of the technical details because I clearly focused on Bitcoin's uncontrollable nature. If you really enjoyed watching this video, hitting the like and subscribe button would help me a lot. If I had made any mistakes, please leave it on the comment section so I can avoid it. With that being said, thank you for watching till the end.